Chapter 39. After the junior rodeo, Matt looked at Alex with slightly different eyes. He'd had no idea she wanted children. Oh, he'd assumed there would be kids, most women wanted them eventually, but from the way she'd reacted to the mutton busting, she'd been wanting them for a while. Badly. He was a good deal older than her. He'd always known that and accepted it. It hadn't occurred to him that she might want a child as badly as he did. "Where are we going now?" he asked once they were back in the truck. He knew she had plans for all day, but she had told him it was a surprise and he'd just have to wait and see. "You'll see." Her eyes sparkled as she glanced at him, then looking back to the road. He wanted to growl, but knew it wouldn't get him anywhere. She might not lie or hide things, but he knew she wouldn't give away a secret once she was determined to keep one. His best bet was just to wait. She'd reveal what it was in time. He just had to wait her out. All right. He sat back and let her drive. At the rate things were going, he'd be familiar with the area before he moved down. He had to go back to Denver in a few days. That wasn't something he was looking forward to, but it had to be done. He was surprised when she pulled into the vacant lot next to Sonic that there were already several trucks parked there, mostly pickups like hers, but there were a few SUVs and a couple of cars too. Without asking again, he followed her out of the truck and met her at the rear, where she was lifting a pair of folding chairs from the bed. "Let me carry those." He tried to take them from her. "Nope, I got it. If you want to help, you can get me a cup of coffee." She nodded toward the drive-in restaurant behind him. "How will I know where you are?" "Just walk down the sidewalk, you won't miss me." She grinned, stretched up and gave him a kiss, then took off down the sidewalk, both chairs slung over the same shoulder. He watched her a moment, then went and got coffee. He found Alex a couple hundred feet down the sidewalk, sitting in the shade of a large tree. But she wasn't alone. There were 4 chairs set up in a row just behind the sidewalk, giving people plenty of room to walk by. Alex sat in one with JV beside her. His sister looked a lot better than the last time he'd seen her nearly a week earlier. She still looked a little tired, but she was more herself today, and looked like the JV he knew and loved. "There you are," Alex said as he got close. "See who I found?" "I see." His eyes flicked to Steve, who stood leaning against the tree behind them, his eyes scanning the people moving around. He suspected Alex knew they would be there, and had planned to sit with them. Not that it really mattered. "Here's your coffee." He handed her the paper cup, then went to hug JV, who started to stand and met him halfway. "You're looking better." "Thanks, I'm feeling better. I guess I really did need to take it easy for a little bit." "Of course you did." He couldn't resist teasing her just a little. "Someday, you'll learn to listen to the men in your life. They always know what's best." Alex coughed, nearly spraying coffee out her nose. That was rich. She looked up at him, half amused. "Why don't you go back and visit the rest of the peanut gallery until the parade starts?" JV pointed one thumb over her shoulder at Steve. "We've got a little while." Still smiling at her reaction, he moved around the chairs and went to lean one hip against the trunk of the tree near where Steve sat. "The peanut gallery, huh?" "Yeah." Steve looked at the 2 women, then just shook his head. "How's Rebecca?" Matt asked. "Stable so far. No more labor, but she's getting cranky about being restricted to the bed. And if you tell her I said so, I'll deny it." He kept his voice low so they wouldn't be overheard. "She's my Karen, and I'd never say anything so disrespectful." Matt just looked at him and knew he was full of it. Nick and Rebecca both knew him well, and knew what he would be likely to say. Matt also knew he wouldn't say it to just anyone. He only said it to Matt because he trusted him. And this would be why they call us the Peanut Gallery. Heads up, Steve said, standing upright. His back was straighter, and he definitely wasn't as at ease as he'd been seconds before. What is it? Matt pushed away from the tree and looked for whatever had put his friend on alert. He didn't see anything out of place. The Kadri and a mine, Steve said under his breath, letting Matt know that the couple who was second in command of the clan had just arrived. They ranked just below Nick and Rebecca. Steve had met them a couple times but didn't spot them right away. Then through an opening in the people lining the street, he spotted a blonde woman only a few years older than himself, and knew it was Karen, the Amine. Behind her was her husband, Julio. He was only an inch or two taller than his wife, with a stocky build that made him look tough. Matt didn't know for sure, he'd never seen him fight, and he didn't plan to. He carried a pair of chairs, much like Alex had earlier, and set them up next to the girls. Karen sat in the chair next to Alex so the girls could talk while Julio joined the men behind them. Matt, good to see you. Julio shook his hand with a firm grip. I heard about Alex's injury. I hope all is well now? He glanced back toward where the women sat laughing as they talked. She was down for a bit but she's good now. He looked at the ground a moment and shook his head. Insisted on getting back to work several days ago, no matter what I said about waiting. Julio chuckled. She's stubborn, that's for sure. He looked around, taking in the people moving around. The crowds were getting thicker. I hear you may be moving down here. Joining us. That's my plan, though I've got to talk to my con before I make it final. You have a problem with it? He wasn't challenging the other man, just wanted to know what obstacles he might face. No, I'll be glad to have you. We need more friendly faces. Do you have many unfriendly ones? Matt was intrigued. Well, Julio dragged out the word. Not unfriendly exactly, but... He paused, seeming to look for a good word. Let's say less than sociable. Matt laughed. That's probably how my con would describe me. Julio looked surprised. I never would have described you like that. I see you more than I see some of our clan, and you don't even live here yet. I've been more active in your clan than in my own. Matt watched the girls, noticing how involved and animated Alex was with them. I've been going through a rough couple of years, but I think I've come to the end of those. There were a lot of people stopping to talk to the three of them for a moment or two, before moving on. I'm sorry to hear that, and I hope you are at the end of it. Just in case the need ever arises though, Karen is a therapist. She even worked with your sister for a while when she first got here. You'd know better than me, but I think it did JV some good. Me too. He looked away, gazing down the street where a group of kids was shouting. They looked to be arguing. He watched them for several seconds, but they seemed to settle whatever the problem was without fists. That was good. Excuse me a minute. He said to the Kadri, then went to Alex. He stood behind her and bent over her until he could see her face. How are you doing for coffee? Want more or something else? He watched as she looked up at him and grinned as his hair flopped away from his head. I'm good, thanks. She stretched up and gave him a soft kiss on the lips, then fell back in her chair once more. He stuck his lower lip out. I was hoping for more than that. You'll get your more, she tugged on his loose lock of hair. Later. Meanie. He stepped back and nuzzled her neck, letting the stubble from several days without shaving tickle her. He rubbed his face around on her neck, until she was laughing uncontrollably. Enough. She gasped for air in between giggles. Do I get a real kiss? Are you gonna keep torturing me if I say no? Maybe. All right, all right. She turned in her chair enough to let him cover her mouth with his. Their tongues tangled and danced for a full minute, until JV poked him in the shoulder. "Enough," she said. "There are children present." He turned to look at his sister. "Now you're the meanie. Should I take care of you the same way?" "I wouldn't recommend it," Steve said from behind him. "She's mean and those nails of hers are hell on the skin." Matt looked at his sister's hands and noticed for the first time that she had inch-long bright red lacquered nails on every finger. The ends were squared, but he bet they would still hurt like hell when she dug them into you. "I'll keep my distance, thank you. I'll just have to find another form of revenge." He narrowed his eyes. "Like maybe switching your coffee to decaf. Death would be swift for that one. Only once you finally woke up." "Hey, it looks like the parade is starting," Karen said from the other side of Alex. She got up and moved to her own chair so the men could sit next to their own ladies.